but the mayor, was saying to the alderman, why don't you get a hold of these people and figure out what the issue is? And he said, no, they can call me. Like he was like indignant about the fact that he had a position to do, like a role to fill as the alderman of his ward and issues to take care of in it. Right. But he was so indignant that it's such a bother to him to go and take care of these issues that he's responsible for.
I had a meeting with the mayor that was supposed to be about the bus situation because they were going to stop the buses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I asked if I could talk with him for a little bit about how important it is to have these buses. And so he was very nice. We spent a lot of time. He never admitted that there would be a problem. And when I explained to him how people have to sometimes get on the bus at 6 a.m. to get to their appointments, and they don't get home until 6 at night because the bus is a big loop.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh.
That was like the first time he had
reckoned
so. With that?
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
And then I suggested that maybe to help with the process, that all of the members of council would sit down and make a list of places that they needed to go one day. I need to see my doctor, I need to get groceries, I need to, and get on the buses. And everyone get on a different bus and see how long it takes you, see how convenient it is. It never happened, but the buses are still running.
Mm-hmm.
So he must have heard something because he didn't shut them down.
If I remember correctly, didn't they try to push it off onto Cattaraugus County?
So I was going to jump in there because I'm in leadership Cattaraugus this year, and I was running government day the day that happened. So we started in the county building, and we were talking with individuals there, and they're like, it's all Olean's fault. And they were really upset. Right. They're like, no one talked to us before making this all very public, and now we're being put on the spotlight. We didn't know what's going on. And then we, at the very end of the day, we ended in the Olean Municipal Building. And when we were talking with them, they're like, it's all the county's fault. And it was just all this back and forth. And we're like, wow.
And it's a bunch of men who won't admit, you didn't come to me first.
Yeah.
So I'm not doing anything for you now. And then the interesting thing in the conversation with the mayor, he said it's not about money. We have the money to pay. It's just that they want the payment quickly, and we don't have that cash fluid. But the county has $25 million sitting, not being used.
They love a good surplus.
Yeah, right. So I said, well, then why don't you ask if the county will pay the bill?
Mm-hmm.
You run the buses, they pay the bill. When you get reimbursed from the state, you give the money to the county. So I don't know if they decided to do that. It seems pretty exceedingly simple. If I thought of it on the fly, I mean, I'm not a councilman.
Well, but here's the hard part: is that you had to think.
Well, yeah, and I didn't care if somebody said I was wrong. I'd be okay.
Oh man, that's
okay
really important. Isn't
I've been wrong a lot.
Speaking of that, who are you?
I'm not telling you now.
It'll be a secret.
Yeah, I'm old. What's her name? And I'm D.B. Busan, and I've been a resident of Olean for about 45 years.
Oh, wow.
Moved away for a while, did a couple of other things, and then actually decided to come back to Olean. So it was a conscious decision that my husband and I made that we wanted to raise our kids here. So people don't believe that, but that's actually true.
What made you decide you wanted to actually do that? Not too many people these days talk of Olean in ways like that.
Well, we were in Olean shortly after we got married, and he was the manager of the Hills department store in the mall. So he was on a career path, and we got transferred several times. We went to Tennessee for a while. We were in Kentucky for a while. We were in Pennsylvania. And when we had our kids, we were like, we want to go back to a nice small town. The mall was still in existence and everything at that point. So we came back. He went to the mall and worked there for a while, and then he could see the writing on the wall, so he left and got into banking, but we stayed here and retired here. And our kids grew up great. We have 2 very successful daughters and sons-in-law, and now 2 granddaughters. One starting college this year, which is a little sobering for me. I'm dealing with it. It'll be fine. But it's been a good life. We have enjoyed living here, and I think that's probably why I kind of got drawn to doing things to make it a better place for everybody, because it gave us such a good life, and I think other people should have that opportunity.
Can you tell us a little bit about those pieces of helping the community and what you've been doing?
Well, I retired from Cutco 17 years ago, and I was retired for about a week, and my husband saw a thing in the chamber newsletter that the food pantry was looking for an assistant manager. I knew nothing about a food pantry. When I got there, Maureen Curry was the manager of the food pantry, and she is like the closest thing to perfection I've ever met, an angel, the best person on earth. And I walked in, we talked for about 15 minutes, and I stayed there for 16 years. So it would just seem like it was a fit. And I think probably one of the, and it may be saddest things, is it's been in existence for 55 years. We would like for it to go out of business and not be needed, but that's not what's happening. And I have concerns about people who don't have enough being blamed for their situation. And maybe they made bad choices. I don't know. I've never made a bad choice personally. But I don't know. Maybe you guys have. But if you had to carry that with you for the rest of your life, and everything that you did, somebody reminded you, I think that would be just terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's a culture shame we live in.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't understand the mindset of the only way I can feel better is if I make you feel worse.
Because we live in one up, one down. So
right, yes.
You know, if I'm not getting mine and if I'm getting mine and you're not getting yours, everything's good.
Exactly.
But if I'm getting mine and you're getting yours, something's wrong.
Right, yeah.
And if there's got to be haves and have-nots.
Yes.
And, I mean, there doesn't, right?
No.
But
Yeah.
we're just so, I think, used to it and ingrained in it.
It's hard to be a have-not.
It sucks.
Oh, absolutely.
I think I had these aha moments in my years at the food pantry, and one of them was a woman who came to the pantry on her way home from the hospital having given birth to a baby, and she did not have diapers. She didn't have baby food. She knew for 7-8 months she was going to have that baby, but she couldn't plan that far ahead because she had 3 other kids, and that's where the focus was. And I was just blown away by the fact that she didn't have the luxury. I mean, I remember going out and shopping for baby clothes and getting everything ready, and here she is, and it's a tragedy for her.
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot of those kinds of things where people, their cupboard is bare. It's not that you didn't have the ingredients to make the dinner you want to make tonight.
You literally have nothing at all.
You literally have nothing. And parents who have to make the choice between eating themselves or having their children eat. So their kids eat and they don't eat.
Do you see that a lot in this area?
Oh, yeah.
I was going to ask, too. I've noticed, and perhaps it's just my imagination kind of running wild, but I feel like every time I see the food pantry open, the line seems to be getting longer and longer each week. Yeah. Does that hold up with your statistics?
Yeah. When I first started, we would have days where there would be maybe half hour, 45 minutes where there was nobody there. And we sat around and talked and had a wonderful time and everything. Now, like today when I was going into the Y for a class that started at 8 o'clock, there was a line at the pantry, and the pantry doesn't open till 10.
Wow.
Yeah, so, and it's that way. It's a couple of hours. And we have a parking attendant because we can't allow so many people in the building, so we have to count everything out, and he has to keep reminding people to turn your car off because you don't want to, waste your gas. But that's okay now. But in the middle of winter, you're freezing.
Oh yeah.
And it just and they're nice people. They're very nice people.
They're some of the nicest.
I have seen somebody take their coat off and give it to somebody else who was waiting in line because she didn't have a coat on. He didn't have an extra coat.
But he said, I'm warm enough, you can use this because you're cold.
Exactly.
Because the people who have the least oftentimes know what it's like to not have anything at all. And so it's a lot easier to say, well, you need this more than I do right now.
Right.
I can always get another coat at some point
Exactly.
in time.
And if I can't, I'll go home and get warm and, it'll be fine.
I'll manage, I'll survive because that's what you have to do when you live in that environment.
Yeah. And people don't realize how it impacts everything in your life. We had an incident of a guy who was just bonkers. He was flying all over the place, screaming at people, throwing things, and some of our volunteers were like, I think we need to call the police, we need to find out what's going on here. So I went out, and I didn't know what I was going to do when I got out there, and he had his groceries and everything, and he was waiting for the bus. So I suggested he go to the picnic shelter to wait for the bus. So he went up there, and I noticed that he had a half gallon of milk with all of his groceries and everything. And I said, why don't you open the milk and take a couple swigs of milk, and I'll go see what I can find, some power bars or something like that. He drank a half gallon of milk in, a minute and a half.
Wow.
And within 5 minutes, he was completely calmed down, completely reasonable, very nice guy. He was clearly dehydrated, starving.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've never experienced anything like this. I mean, sometimes I'm a little hungry, So I get a little
hangry.
You're
But
saying that, and it sounds to me like he was having a low blood sugar attack.
Exactly.
I'm a diabetic, and I was like, oh, man.
All of those things, yes.
And, he probably doesn't have diabetes, or maybe he does.
Right.
But, you don't eat for who knows how long. You don't have anything in your system.
Yep.
What do you think is going to happen? I mean, it all comes down to the hierarchy of needs. What are our most basic needs? Food, water, shelter, which includes clothing that is seasonable, comfortable to wear, shit like that. I mean, we are constantly
it
like,
literally is not rocket science.
What's going on with all these problems, with all of these homelessness and hunger and... Well, what the fuck do you think?
Well, I think it's good that you bring that up because I wanted to talk about in the paper the other day, our local government here is creating a homelessness task force, which I questioned because I didn't personally see a lot of that, but apparently there's a large number of homeless individuals in Jamestown, and they're afraid about that moving over to here. I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Wow. I guess for me, the first thing I noticed, the same article, I looked at it, the first thing I said is there's no homeless people on this task force.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't possibly know what the problem is unless you have these people.
Yeah.
That was one of the things I picked out from the article.
And no, they're not going to come to you and offer their time. But I'm betting if you came to the food pantry, spend a little time chatting with them, don't come in a coat and tie.
Yeah.
And talk to them for a little while, and then I know there's a couple of them that would probably want to do it, and would probably, and I mean, even people like me, who are not homeless and not in need, but know about it. And I didn't notice anybody from the front lines of any agencies. It was all the higher, the people that make decisions, and that I understand. But you can't make them unless you know what the problems are.
Mm-hmm. How are you going to know what the problems are unless you unless you go and do something to inform yourself or bring somebody who knows to inform you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. One of my observations over the last couple of years as I've become super ingratiated in the goings-on in Olean is that there's not really any listening taking place
Right.
up at the top,
Right.
whether we're talking alderman's, mayor, or even their representatives for their offices
Right.
and such. You can't even be guaranteed that they're going to hear what you had to leave a message for.
Right.
So is that in line with what you've assessed over the years? Do you really seem like there's a disconnect too?
Totally. And in fact, when I called the mayor's office and asked to meet with him, I honestly expected that I would not get to. I was really,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, well, I have to put that on my
Surprise.
calendar.
Called on the right day.
Yeah. But I think that politically we're in a place where, and pardon this, but a bunch of white guys are making all the decisions for everything in our country. And these are people that don't have the lived experience. And this is going to go off on a tangent, but I was just reading a study that had been done about studying the brains of men who are fathers and the difference in the brain of a father who is involved with their child from birth and the father who provides a wonderful home and, all
Is
the things that
ultimately
kids
detached.
all the things that the kid needs but doesn't spend time with the kid, and the brains are actually different. And I mean, you think, well, that's life experience in it, but actually it's physiologically different. It really changes your brain. But think about a country that would be run by people who had that experience and how much empathy they would have and kindness and compassion.
Well, that was the exact thing I was going to say, is that when you're involved in rearing your child, it forces you, especially if you're a man, and I know men can have trouble with the sense of empathy and understanding, caring, nurturing, gentleness. When you are in that fatherly role, guess what? You'll start to develop those
Exactly.
things.
And you like it.
That changes the way your brain works.
Yep.
All of a sudden, the world's a little bit different. You relate to the world. You interact with the world a little bit differently.
Right.
Because you're developing a wider range of emotions and feelings and understanding.
Yeah, when I'm at my most empathetic, I worry. I feel badly for men who think they have to know everything and they have to have an answer, because that must be awful. It must be just terrible to think you have to. If somebody says, how are you, you're going to have to actually say how you are. You can't just say good. You're going to have an answer for that. But because of that, none of these people want to bring anybody else to the table. They just all want to, I'm going to say what I say, you say what you say what, and then we're all going to leave. And nothing will change. And one of the things is housing. We have some housing available, but you have to go through so much to get to it. And you have to be drug-free, and you have to follow these rules. And if you don't follow the rule, you're going to be booted out. And everything that you read says that the first thing you need to do is provide housing that is no strings attached. Just come on in and live here. And services that are available when you want them. You want to stop drinking now. Okay, cool. We have a place down here. You can go talk to them.
Yep.
You want to get off drugs. All right, we have that. You want to get a job.
Here's the hookup.
We have training. But that person makes the decision. And some of them will never make it. Some of them are going to live in that housing forever. But it's better there than on the streets.
Yeah. What? It's better there than on the street?
This isn't rocket science? What are you talking about?
It's better to spend
Right.
a little bit of money to keep
Exactly.
somebody in four walls
Yeah.
with, running water and, heat and whatever, as
Right.
opposed to letting them fucking be a menace on the street.
Right. Yeah, and
What?
if you're bothered by the people on the street, let's try to figure out a way to help. I mean, that mall sitting there, there is so much space in that mall. Oh my God. It's just,
They're holding hearings on that soon, I saw.
I know.
And it'll still be 5 years before anything happens.
Yeah.
Well, and even with housing, we have affordable housing. We have market rate housing. neither one of those affordable housing isn't affordable for everybody. Market rate housing just simply means you take the average of, the most plush properties in the world and then that's what you call market rate housing. So you're still shutting people out.
Yeah.
And it's just...
I mean, prices too, let alone. I don't know how people have adapted to some houses that used to be appraised at $150, now $300,000 to $400,000.
Yeah.
How do you even start a family that way?
Yeah.
So
well, you don't.
Yeah.
It's like you were saying earlier, you don't. You have 3 kids and then you're pregnant with a 4th and you can't afford diapers or food for the 3 you've got.
And you can't afford birth control. And
and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And guess what? It's your fault.
Right.
Because all of these compounding things and, nobody's perfect. People make mistakes. People don't, this, that, the other thing. But it's like, I mean, when do we say, okay, what can we do to help?
Exactly.
When do we say, okay, obviously there's a bunch of bad shit going on. What do you need to get out of this?
Right.
What do you need to find a sense of stability?
And
it doesn't have to be perfect or luxurious or glamorous. It just needs to be stable.
It has to be stable. And one of the things that at the food pantry we kind of always had as one of our many mantras, but not to say, oh, we can't do that, but to ask, how can we do it? And when you approach it that way, we started a diaper closet that we get donations of diapers. People give money for that so we can supply diapers, baby food, formula, all of that kind of stuff. We learned that a lot of people have to go to the laundromat to do their laundry, and that's expensive, and detergent is really crazy expensive, and I happen to order online a thing called True Earth laundry strips, which are these little...
Yeah.
And that's what you use to, and I ordered them, and they thanked me for my order and sent me a note that said, do you know that we make a charitable contribution of laundry strips for every package that's sold? So I sent a letter back, and I said, hey, I know about this food pantry, and they could really use it. And they get $6,000 a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you did that with a single letter.
Single phone call. I mean, it was an email.
Oh, it was an email. Okay.
Email.
Still.
Yeah, modern age.
Welcome to the 21st century.
Yeah.
It can be that easy. Now, I mean,
But they could have said no, and that would have been fine.
Right.
I mean, but, why not try?
Yeah.
Right.
And then you have to package them, so we got somebody, we were buying envelopes for a while. We got someone to donate envelopes, and then we put them through the copier. They have the instructions that would be on the package. Well, we have them printed on the envelope, and then we just hand them out.
Wow.
Brilliant.
So, and we've done that with a whole lot of things. We've done working with people to try to help them understand what kind of food they should be eating as opposed to what kind of food they want to eat.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And you're all familiar with mac and cheese in the box. We all grew up eating that stuff, and there's nothing real in it. I mean, there's just the box is probably more nutritious than what's in it. But little kids, it's almost like crack cocaine to children. They look at that and they go, oh. So we've done a really good job of saying to people, don't waste your choices on mac and cheese. We have a place at the food pantry that's called a Pick 4 room, and these are foods that you don't really need. But when you're finished with all your shopping, you can come in there and you can pick 4 things out that you want, maybe some cookies, some pudding or something like that. So that mac and cheese is in that room. So you know right away it's not in the room where the food you're supposed to eat is. And then we do things like we cook and we give out samples and we give recipes, and we did cooking classes where I asked people why they would be getting groceries and they would say, well, I can't cook. So, and I would say, are you not able to cook? Well, I don't have a stove that works. Oh, okay. Did you ask your landlord about that? No, because he'll throw me out.
Oh.
So now we sit down and we talk, and we said, what about crock pots? So we wrote a grant. We got money for crock pots. We came up with this Be a Crock Star thing, and it had logos and everything. And we brought people in and taught them how to cook in a crock pot. They took all the ingredients home from the classes, and then tomorrow's dinner's all ready for you. Just put it in the crock pot. And we had one guy who came up. He said, I raised 5 kids. I now have grandchildren. I decided it was time I learned how to cook. And but you could see when he was shopping, it was a completely different shopper.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Now he was taking fresh vegetables. He was taking whole chickens. He was making stock. We taught him how to make stock with the bones. So once you finished all the food that you need, put it all there. And
these are all free lessons you're giving people.
Yeah.
Wow.
Everything's free. So, and nobody's paid. Nobody's paid there.
It has to be.
Exactly.
I won't name any names. I won't throw shade at any other nonprofits in the area, but I often hear from a lot of nonprofits, the reason we can't do more is simply because we can't afford to do this for free, basically.
Yeah.
What's different about the food pantry? Why are you guys able to do these classes, to be able to do this community outreach, to be able to make these almost sponsorship style connections with laundry detergent companies?
Well, that's just a thing of what the hell, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if they say no, they say no. We're back where we were. But we have a wonderful bunch of people who really, really care about what they do. And they don't care about getting credit for it, and they don't care about getting applause for it. They just want to do it. And then we are real good about being kind of public with stuff that we need. And if you say to the world that you need money to buy crock pots, you know, somebody will come up with that money for you. There's grant funding for a lot of stuff. We have probably several hundred people who just donate every month. They just, it's part of what they do. If we put word out that we're in need of anything, we get it. And we buy food from Feed More Western New York, which you can get, it's the cheapest possible way to get food. So when people ask, you know, do you need cereal? We say, well, yeah, we can always use cereal, but what we could really use is money because we can buy cereal really cheap. But then that also means that we can buy the right cereal that we want to buy, and we don't have to buy Frosted Flakes and that kind of stuff.
Can you explain that a little further for viewers who may not understand why your food pantry gets access to discounts, for instance?
Well, we're part of the Food Bank of Western New York, and there's tracking that you have to do. There's paperwork you have to fill out. There's grant applications, you know, that kind of stuff. My husband did a lot of that when I was there. I've since retired now, but when I was there, he was our grant writer, and he likes to do that stuff.
It takes someone to do that.
That doesn't. It's not me. I write the letter that goes with it that gives the little story. But he writes the grants. And there's lots of help that's available, but you have to be willing to ask for it. And you have to not be hurt if you don't get it. You can't get all pissy with people if they don't jump on your bandwagon right away.
You can deal or you can dwell.
Yeah. And we're just, it's just an amazing thing. One story is we give out Christmas baskets or Christmas stockings to kids. We give out Easter baskets. We do birthday bags. We do all of that stuff. We had Christmas stockings, and we have one lovely lady in town who makes them and brings them in. And we were running out. So I asked one of our volunteers if she would go to Walmart and buy some stockings. And I gave her the credit card. And as she opened the door, coming in the door were 5 people with a truckload of Christmas stockings.
Wow.
I mean, was that divine intervention? I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but it sounds like it. But that's the kind of stuff that happens. When there was a need, it was always filled somehow.
That's great.
And I attribute it a lot to the volunteers too, who talk to their friends about it, and nobody complains, nobody whines, and everybody does everything there. I mean, you scrub floors, you do paperwork, you clean the bathroom. Well, we actually in tandem does that. That's a service to us that we don't pay for either. So, but you make community connections, and you keep them. You keep your word, and offer help to other agencies. We get food to the warming house, and we get food from the warming house and Genesis House, and all of those things. So it is a real community effort.
What are some common misconceptions you hear a lot about the food pantry?
Well, probably that people are taking more food than they need. Sometimes they will say people are selling it. And I'm like, man, if you can make money with a can of corn, you go ahead and do it. That's just awesome. I want to figure out how to do that. That's very good. But we just basically say that's not our call. We're not here to pass judgment on why people are here. We don't. You're supposed to have income levels, and stuff. And through a lot of lobbying with the Food Bank of Western New York, now it's just an attestation that you sign the paper and you say that you are within these income guidelines. We don't look at any pay stubs. We don't look at
That's great.
At any of that stuff. It's on you, and I really don't care why you say you need food. If you're here, you need it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's if you look in the parking lot stuff, there's some nice cars in the parking lot, and that's something that we get thrown up. There's a big pickup truck in the parking lot. The guy could have been laid off last week and doesn't have a cent.
Exactly.
Or he could have put all his money in his pickup truck and doesn't have anything else. I don't know, but we're just there to help.
Yeah. That's great. I'm a what's the inverse of advocate?
A detractor?
I'm a very big detractor for means testing myself personally, because you see what it does. It not only does it breed that sense of like division between those who are benefiting from it and those who feel like they should be benefiting from it, but we also just know that when everybody's getting something, the whole floor begins to rise.
Yes. Well, that's the thing. If people can eat properly, they can make better decisions.
Absolutely.
They can get employed. Kids can go to school and actually learn.
But did they work hard enough for it?
Yeah, I know.
Well, I like what you were saying. I hear a lot of what's the common one that I heard a lot of? These people have a smartphone, so why are they going to the food?
Oh, that's
everybody has a smartphone.
And
the government will give you a free smartphone because.
Do you know that a whole lot of those aren't charged? I mean, that's one of the things they do at the pantry now is a charging station because they have, or they can't afford to pay the bill.
Well, I mean, if you've been on the bus, since 6 in the morning, and you haven't had a chance to charge your phone all day, your phone's dead.
Yeah.
Well, and so Steve and I, and I'm sure Noah can attest, we were teaching people how to use, in our area, the Oats bus. And for one thing, it was really hard to find the schedule. Once you found the schedule, it was nigh incomprehensible. It was not set up in an intuitive way. Oh my gosh, it was color-coded through vomit. Like someone just threw up on the page, and that's what they stuck with.
And the page is this way, and the writing is this way?
Yeah, it's completely unintuitive. Like no one can read it. Yeah, any kind of mental impairment, like no way you're reading that. And then
the other part of it is that it's not accurate. So even if you could figure out exactly where you should be at what time, you could be there, and that bus is not going to be there. And they'll say, oh, well, we changed that.
Didn't you know?
Yeah, but we didn't change it on any website. We didn't change it on any of the handouts. We just changed it. And we would have, the bus comes to the food pantry, but it comes to the other end of the parking lot. Doesn't come down in front of the door. So people who have some disabilities, by the time they can get out and get moving down the parking lot, the bus is gone.
Oh,
Now they have to wait 6 hours for it to
Exactly.
return.
And we had
Oh my Lord.
people that used the bus or walk were limiting what they could take because they had to carry it. So we said, okay, we need to get some shopping carts for them. So we found some folding shopping carts. They can use it for laundry and, all kinds of stuff. And I went on the Oats website to be sure that it met their guidelines for what you can take onto the bus, and it did. So the first time somebody went out to get on the bus, and the driver said, you can't bring the cart on. So she came back in, and I was like, okay, let me check on it. So I checked, and the next time the bus came, I waited, and the driver again said no. And I said, actually, your website says that you can put those carts on the bus. And he said, well, I don't know how to get them on there. And I said, well, you have a lift.
Yeah.
He said, that's an ADA lift. That's not for shopping carts. And I said, sir, that doesn't mean that it's only for wheelchairs. That means it's good for wheelchairs. You can put anything on it.
You can do anything you want with it.
No, I don't think you can. I said, well, you can. I checked that you can. So then, so now we can put shopping carts on the bus. But the bus wasn't going to do that. And then you have to educate each driver because there are different drivers coming different days.
Yeah.
So
They're all going to give you an
Oh, my
excuse.
Lord.
exactly. Yeah, what Joe learned.
You're doing the job their employer should be doing,
He
frankly.
didn't tell Pete about it. So now, and then after about 2 or 3 weeks, it would fall off again, and you'd have to go back out and remind them. It is not easy to be poor.
No.
It's a very, very challenging way to live. And I think probably for me, the one thing I took away from 16 years at a food pantry is, God, I have such a wonderful life. Mm-hmm. It's just fantastic. And I'm not rich. I'm an average person, but comparatively speaking, I can go home at night and sit down and relax, and I don't have to worry about where my next meal is coming from. I have a roof over my head.
It's worth everything, right?
It is, yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah. It should not be that hard to do that.
What do you think of the atmosphere around Olean these last, I've noticed, 2 or 3 years? We've been kind of painfully ingratiated in the business community as well. And my big takeaway is that there's this grand sense of the word they used from Brian's book was Olean's Renaissance.
Mm-hmm.
You can even see it on the sign.
Yes.
This is my word. Before they took it, I want that known. Wherever the camera is looking at me.
And I don't know about you, but I don't see a renaissance happening.
Oh, it's happening in some neighborhoods.
You think so?
Oh, yeah, right downtown. It's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you mean North Union?
North Union, yes.
Yeah.
There's roundabouts, there's trees, there's, it's very pretty. Go 2 blocks off of there. Mm-hmm. And this was another thing that came up when I was talking to Mr. Alio, and I said the sidewalks are a disaster in most areas. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, the sidewalks are the property owner's responsibility. And I said, yes, and that didn't come from God, it came from you guys.
Yeah.
And you can change the law anytime you want to.
Why would they do that? Then they would have to fix the sidewalks.
Exactly. Well, I cited an example of somebody that I know, it's me, who was walking on 6th Street to go to theater workshop. I was one of the nuns in Nonsense. Mm-hmm. I tripped on the sidewalk and I broke my ankle.
Oh my gosh.
So then I was the gimping nun in Nonsense who came in from the wings instead of up the stairs. That was 35 years ago. That same sidewalk is still broken today. It has never been repaired.
Mm-hmm.
It's right across the street from Oak Hill Park.
Oh my Lord.
It's a public park. It's a public theater building. And if you're on
Who do you have to sue when you fall?
Yeah, I didn't realize that. And where it is, it's obviously a rental property. Mm-hmm. So then you've got to find the owner.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know, go down there with your damn equipment and put a sidewalk in.
I know.
Yeah.
No.
I
It costs money.
I remember
we have a surplus to defend.
We have another roundabout to put in.
We do.
Yes.
yeah, the amount of weekly meetings that I've come into, and they're still talking about putting in new roundabouts to this day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just
every intersection would be a roundabout.
Yeah.
Why not? I suppose.
I mean, Victoria talked about that when. Do you know Victoria Swear?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, mm-hmm. So she was on here for an episode, and she was talking about how they're proposing a roundabout in front of Reed's.
Oh, I know.
And
Street, yeah.
and she was like, my childhood tree is there,
yeah.
and they're gonna have to cut it down.
Yeah.
And why would you do that? It's a perfectly fine intersection as it stands.
I actually stood there for half an hour one day, watching traffic. There were no problems. There were absolutely no problems. The configuration, I don't know how you're going to get in and out of Reed's when there's a roundabout there. I think it'll affect shoppers because shoppers are going to go, I don't want to mess around with that roundabout.
Yeah, I do not think that's a good place for one.
No.
I think some of them are okay, but that one is not a good place. Oh, did you hear about the, so we were talking about this morning, but there are discussions about putting the like QR code parking meters all throughout Olean.
Oh.
Yeah, they were talking about setting pricing for parking downtown and in all the lots and.
That'll bring people into town.
Yeah, that's what we
exactly
said too.
We
We're like
said.
once.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, make it walkable.
Well, it'll be very walkable.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to be parking there, so you'll have to walk
there.
from somewhere.
They put fee parking in the parking lot behind.
Yeah.
And didn't say anything. And I parked there when I went. I met some friends for lunch at Brothers Bistro. Mm. And when I came back, I had a ticket on my car, and I was like, what? There's no meter. What am I supposed to do?
Mm-hmm. Well,
I'm supposed to voluntarily go over to this thing and say I parked here, and this is when I parked, and this. So.
Yeah, well, when Steve and I were parking back there back in the day, we would always park where there wasn't one or there was a broken meter and just be like, it's not our problem. And we were pretty lucky, all things considered. I didn't get a ticket. Did you get a ticket, Steve?
No.
Yeah.
Well, and it also helped.
Rule of thumb.
It also helped when I parked on Main Street that I knew the meter maid, and I would go out and talk to him. So.
Yeah, and then
he would usually cut me a little slack.
and we had the 2 hour.
So you see,
marker.
there isn't a parking issue. You guys have solved it. It's fine.
Jeez. Well, because Steve and I, when we were working there, we would go out every 2 hours and turn our tires. So we had moved the car within the last 2 hours, and I mean it's ridiculous how many businesses and storefronts are on Main Street there. And I did reach out to one of my aldermen over there, and they're like, well. Not much we can do, and I'm like, that's not really true.
There is something they can do.
Yeah.
Like you kind of make the rules here. We can make new rules,
and apparently you can't. Once the rule is made, you can never change it.
Yeah. Well, these people
if it's a good
don't even
rule.
know how to change the rules. Frankly,
if it's a rule we really like,
witness the sidewalk rules, for example.
Yeah,
I mean, how many people do we have in Olean that are in wheelchairs that you see in the middle of the road?
I make the joke about, because I used to ride my bike a lot. I made the joke that I won't be able to have kids if I keep riding my bike on these sidewalks.
You're probably
You're not supposed to, Brian. You're not supposed to ride on the sidewalks, anyways. You're supposed to ride your bike on the road.
Yeah, I know. And then I got honked and ran off the road when I was riding on Lawrence Street there, which has the signs for this is also a bike path lane.
Right.
Even though there are no bike lanes, it's just you share this road. And I've been honked. I've been nearly run off the road before. There's no reason I want to drive on that road. It's ridiculous. I mean, I do see more and more people using the bike lanes down North Union, but still, you're taking your life into your own hands. There are people backing up and pulling out through your lane, and you're supposed to merge into the roundabout with no protected areas for yourself as a bicyclist. And most of the time, the traffic will just say, I'm bigger, so I'm going to take the right of way, even though when I looked it up, I believe the bikes will have the right of way if you are next to or behind them. Whereas if you're already in front of them, you do get the right of way. But if you're next to them, they get the right of way. And most of the time, it's totally ignored.
So you have to study the roundabouts before you use them.
Yeah, which is it's not intuitive, and it's so dangerous. I do respect, and I have to put out there that I do like the fact that they're trying to be more progressive in making these changes. But most of the time, it really feels like the research is not done completely.
Yeah, it's doing a lot without actually listening to the community's wants and desires. You know, we don't have a very vocal forum in Olean for people to show up and speak.
Because no one listens to them.
Yeah, but exactly. There's people have voiced their opinions for years on these subjects, and like you've said, your alderman will just say, "Sorry, I have a full-time job. Right. This is not that. So you can maybe talk to somebody else if you can, and complain to the state or something."
And when I reached out to various aldermen about just getting to know them, just getting to meet them, that was super easy. I could get in almost anyone's door.
I'll talk about myself just fine.
They'd meet with me, no problem. But when it came to, hey, this is a problem that I'm running into. Are other people running into it? Can we make any changes? It's kind of just like...
I don't want to deal with your problems. I want to get paid to be an alderman.
That's not what I wanted to talk to you about. Yeah, and I don't think they get paid that much. I just don't...
They really don't.
I don't think it's worth selling your soul for...
This, and frankly, the way I see it, if you're going to be a public servant, be a goddamn public servant. Because I'm sorry, I've listened to probably 100 hours of their goddamn meetings, and the amount of times I've heard almost every single one of them say, "Well, I run a business, and this is not how we do things. We're not trying to run the city like a business.
No, we're not.
The city's not in the business of making money."
Oh God, that line.
And it's like, but you're going to come up with new creative ways to
make money,
to QR code people so you can put a ticket on their hood, so because $20 is better than $2 in quarters.
Yeah,
that's what I mean when I say there's a lot happening with no listening. I know it's not the city council's fault, and I know Bob's a friend of ours, but like opening a golf thing where a tea shop used to be, for instance, it just feels like there's a lot of like. There are a couple of people talking to each other.
Yeah.
And they're like, "This is a good idea. We should do this."
Yeah.
And then they do it because they have the resources and capital.
Right.
And then we watch it inevitably fade.
Exactly.
Well, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, because there are a lot of altruistic people with a lot of money in the area, and I do feel like they run into the problem that Noah brought up, where they'll get into their own recursive circles.
Right.
And they won't do that. They won't put their money where it would be the most effective. And of course, this is my opinion, but I'd like to hear your opinion as well on, like, do you see a lot of that? Is that something that's going on?
It's kind of hard because from the perspective of the food pantry, I see such incredible generosity from people who really do have, well, they have a lot of money, but they really are helpful. But on the other hand, I know it's really literally a drop in the bucket to them. So, and I don't understand. We have a lot of small businesses opening that seem to be very niche businesses.
Oh, very.
That I don't know what the thought process was, in coming up with the idea for the business. And I don't know, like, how many secondhand clothing stores you can actually have before they don't. I mean, you go to the bridge and you can get just about anything, $10 will get you a big bag full of stuff. So the bridal shop downtown, I don't think is going to last.
I don't
very
either.
long.
I think most of the boutiques on North Union are probably struggling. We've talked to a lot of the business owners who've participated in the chamber's programs, even Lane Business Accelerator, and frankly, I don't know if any of them are cutting even yet. There may be a few people who kind of have a niche, but they've managed to move their product onto the internet, so they're not even really servicing locals anymore. Yeah. They're doing okay, I tend to see, but I mean, there's a lot of talk like we're thriving. This is great, but people are 1 month away from foreclosing.
Being a business owner has got to be the most difficult thing in the world.
Yeah, in Olean too.
Yeah.
I mean.
Well, you see the turnover, and as a business and the owner in the area, you really feel like you're just standing on a pile of corpses, and
I don't know what that feels like.
and I talked with a number of the business owners, and they, especially boutiques, they have a really good heart. Yes. They're really in it for the mission. Mm-hmm. And I think just locally, and for some reason we've had a bunch pop up at the same time, all completely independent of each other.
Right. I know. And I
think,
what are you doing?
And that's just kind of like serendipity manifest. But I do see there are people with good hearts and there are people with good intentions. Right. And the reality is, and it's a crushing reality, but business doesn't necessarily have a heart.
Right.
And to run a business with a heart, you have to make a lot of tough decisions. Yeah. And usually those will impact yourself. The less heart you have, the more you can grow. I don't want to go into that any further, but capitalism doesn't usually have a heart. And right. that's where I'll leave that at.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate, but I mean, I don't have the answers to that. My husband was in retailing for 30 years, and the mall was the place to be.
Yeah.
And I remember everybody going to the mall, and you hung out, and you had a good time, and there was theaters there, and you could get something to eat, and go to the movies.
Even when we were kids, shopping. The parking lot would be packed.
Yeah.
You know?
And just to watch that just slowly deteriorate, and no attention by the owners, and it was just,
Oh, it's so sad driving around there.
Do you... What are your thoughts on community involvement? So we're talking about the mall, people coming together, existing as a community. And of course that mall is pretty much defunct at this point, but do you still see a lot of that? Or is it hidden, or is it just not there at all?
Well, that's an easy question. So I'm supposed to solve all of the problems of the world today.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, that's why we brought you here on this highbrow program that's watched by everyone everywhere.
I'm gonna give you a good answer. I got no idea.
That's fair.
I really don't.
If you were king of the world, you'd have no idea how to solve it.
Right. But if I were king, no, I don't want to be king. I don't want that at all.
I see people online, sticking with the mall point then, to kind of narrow it down a little bit. Do you think there's merit in pursuing things like trying to lobby the city to do things like perhaps purchase the building and put rent control on it and make it be public property? Because that's kind of where I fall in this.
I think you can check off a lot of boxes in the mall with the fact that it's not going to be in anyone's neighborhood, so the people who live there cannot say, I don't want those people living next to me.
Yeah.
So it's a big place. You could have housing. You could have all of the services that we talked about earlier that people who are unhoused now need, and they can be available. You could have medical offices there, dental offices, all of that stuff, and it could really change everything. I mean, we think we have a big homeless population, and we do compared to the population of Olean, but it's really not that many people. Mm-hmm. It's not thousands of people. And even the big problem in Jamestown that everybody's so concerned about, it's about 200 to 300 people.
Yeah, I read 300 people.
Yeah, so it's not unsolvable.
Not at all.
But you have to want to do it.
Yeah.
Well, and you have to want to do it sooner than later, because the longer you wait, the worse and worse it's going to get, and then it's going to be untenable, and then we're really fucked.
Yeah, it needs some really cool, wealthy person to just stand up and say, okay, I'm going to start the ball rolling. I'm going to put this much money into, some sort of a fund or whatever that we're going to see if we can turn Olean around.
Yeah.
And make it, the place to live for everybody. And then that cool guy can go out on the golf course and, pickleball
say, look at
courts
what
and all
I
that.
did.
And, get a lot of accolades from the community and talk to friends and other people.
Memorials and scholarships in their name.
Make it the cool thing to do.
You can put a statue of him
in
Lincoln Park.
I don't know who he is or she is. Yeah.
Let's
So-
assume they're listening, though.
that-
What would you want them, if you could say anything to them, if you're talking directly to that individual right now, and you'd want to get one message through to them, what would that be?
Probably in another time and place, I would just say, look in your heart. If you had no rules, no guidelines, no regulations, nothing, what would you do to make this community a better place for everybody?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I mean, it's just going to take somebody, and you were saying about scholarships and all that stuff, but that gets out of hand. That gets
absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
that gets ugly real fast.
That's
If you're just doing it to get your name on the wall, that's really not motivation enough.
Oh,
I don't think.
I completely agree.
I think that's one of the hardest parts is like actually like having that civic minded like, okay, what is in the best interest of everybody, not just me.
Right. And I think that we also somehow have to get the message that what's in the best interest for those people is in the best interest for everybody.
Yeah.
Because if people have homes and people have food to eat, it's just a much more pleasant place for everybody to be.
Imagine them being able to be stable, functioning, contributing members of an economy.
Exactly.
Because they have the basic things that they need
Right.
to be able to move forward.
Yeah, and actually think about a future,
Yeah.
which is something that most of them just aren't able to do.
You could
It's
see
day to
Olean
day.
grow for the first time in almost a decade because the population just keeps dwindling
Right.
year by year.
Right.
It really would bring about a lot of change. It is unfortunate the amount of name placement type funding that's around here. Just giving, crumbs as long as you give me credit for it.
Exactly.
They're
And
too much.
That's a thing that we've been very mindful of at the food pantry. We don't do any of that.
That's wonderful. That's really
if you
wonderful.
give us $1 million, we're going to thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not going to get your name on the door, and
Good.
it's not going to be a wall for you and all of that kind of stuff. And we just have decided, and I think that deep down inside, people really appreciate that.
Yeah, I know I do.
It's
And
truly
I-
selfless.
And I even think about some really, really rich guy who deeply buried in his heart doesn't need to have that wall named for him. But
Sometimes
Also-
it's good enough just to do good.
well, yes,
Yeah.
doing good things really helps you feel better. I mean, it's just a really nice thing to do. I would go home from the pantry every day I worked there. I went home, I was in a great mood. I was surrounded by people who loved what they were doing. I got to talk to people who had, little things like this one guy came in and he had his mother crochet coasters in rainbow colors, and he gave them to me, and he said, you've been so nice to me. And
That's so sweet.
no, now the guy getting his name on the wall is not going to get that feeling.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just that kind of stuff, just people who remember you, people who talk to you. And an interesting thing, too, I found if I see food pantry clients anywhere other than the food pantry, they will not speak unless I speak first, because I think they don't want to embarrass me,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
they don't want people to think I know them,
Well, that's
which is
heartbreaking.
awful. Which is why
Shame.
I walk up to people that I know from the pantry and initiate a conversation, because I don't want them to feel that way.
Yeah.
But there's little things like that you don't realize.
It's way easier to be kind than it is
It
to
is.
be mean.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just that we live in a world where we default to being mean.
Yeah, I don't have time to do that. It's all about me, okay?
Yeah.
I want to feel good, and so I do stuff that makes me feel good, and it's working out okay.
So you've retired from that role. Are you finding yourself taking on any other roles, or are you just?
Well, we do Meals on Wheels. We substitute drive for Meals on Wheels when somebody can't make it. I'm doing some stuff with Operation Warm Hearts, which has clothing and stuff for kids. But I'm not. I'm intentionally not getting myself in any decision-making positions. I'm old and tired, and
ready for somebody else to take the reins.
I'm ready for somebody else to take that over.
Are you seeing many young people taking up the mantle after you?
Well, it's hard because most of the people who are working there are retired, and so they have time during the day. The pantry's open during work hours and school hours. So that's kind of difficult. But I think that there will be those youngish people who are between 60 and 80 who aren't young by anybody else's standards, but they still have a lot of energy and they have a lot of time. And I think there will always be people coming up to do that. Like I said, I would like for them to go out of business, to not need it, and to have it, turned into a community building or something like that, but that's not going to happen. We've had two expansions since I've been there. I didn't even get to the gardens. We have community gardens.
Wow, really?
I didn't know about that. Where are those at?
They're right behind the pantry.
Okay.
We have a high tunnel, which was funded and built by the Rotary Club. So that allows us to have fresh vegetables about 10 months out of the year.
Wow, that's great.
And then we have about 80 raised bed gardens. Wow. That about half of them are, you can adopt those and you can plant your own vegetables and harvest it. We just ask you if you have anything extra to give it to us.
Yeah.
And then the other ones are food pantry gardens that we grow vegetables for the pantry.
And those are all behind the pantry?
You wouldn't know it's back there just by driving
by. I didn't know that was
by.
back there, yeah.
Yeah, we'll go take it right over. You'll be impressed. It's pretty cool. And that also then enables us we can give fresh vegetables to a lot of other, nonprofits and stuff, because sometimes you get more zucchini than you need. Like right now.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody said that it was a bad joke, but it said, be sure to lock your car or somebody will open the door and put zucchini in the But yeah, so that was another thing. That one is one of the reasons that I loved Maureen Curry so much. Maureen started those 16 years ago, and they were little wading pools. And she filled them with dirt and planted stuff.
Wow.
Oh.
And they didn't have any drainage, so they just got all muddy and killed the plants. But at that point, Maureen could have said, okay, that was a bad idea, we're done. And she said, nope, let's figure out how we can do this. And somebody drilled holes in the plastic to get the water out so they could pick them up. And then she was like, we can drill holes in the plastic and the water will drain out. And so that's how they started. But she could have quit.
Yeah.
And she didn't. And that's what my whole thing has been, don't say we can't do it, say how can we do it? And that grew into
that's
lush
a
gardens
huge operation from what you describe. Yeah.
It's pretty cool. And that's a whole other crew of volunteers. So there's about 25 to 30 volunteers who do
just
all
do the
of that.
gardening.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's
more communities should have that, as far
exactly.
as I'm concerned.
And there was one on Green Street. They built one on vacant property in Green Street. I don't know how it's going, but the last time I went by there was fencing around it and it was locked. And I was like,
not a good sign.
You can't lock people out of the garden.
Kind of takes out the community part.
Exactly. And so what if they come and take food? That's why you're growing it.
That means they need it
exactly.
in some capacity.
Right. But yeah, I'd like to see those kind of things. We got a lot of vacant lots,
all over this country. I mean, every single town could do with one, as far as I'm concerned. It not only the skills and responsibility it teaches to take care of the plants, but the the benefit of being able to have calories and nutrition.
Right. And being out in the outdoors, being healthy and all of that.
I mean, just
so
this entire country is vitamin D deficient at this point. So yeah, anything to get them outside.
yeah, and so I'm going to say we didn't solve any problems, but
But we identified quite a few.
Yeah, we did.
Well, or if for the lay individual in the community, the average person, if you have the ability to talk directly to them, what would you ask or tell them?
Hold that thought for 30 seconds.
Just think about it.
I'm pondering.
Yeah.
On the fly. Okay.
Now I can.
Now you can answer. Do you need me to re-ask it, or are you good?
Probably okay.
Okay.
I guess the first thing that I would tell everybody is to find something, a need that you could be passionate about and get involved with that, whatever that is. It can be providing child care for people who need child care for their kids when they go to work. It can be a food pantry. It can be a soup kitchen. Whatever you think would tap something inside of you, try that. It'll give you more joy than you ever imagined. You will get so much more out of it than you have to give. And the other thing would be any monetary contributions that you can make to any nonprofit. It doesn't have to be a huge amount of money, but a little bit of money from everybody means a lot. And then those nonprofits can use that money in the best possible way to help meet the needs of the community. But my first thing would be get out there and do something. It's good for you. Okie dokie.
Yeah. Well, and where
Lesson
can people
learned.
go to get involved?
That's an interesting question. There should be one source, like a nonprofit board or something that what everybody's doing. And the only thing with that is that the onus of that becomes the nonprofits have to update things and get it to them. And if I'm getting food to people, I don't want to be sitting down updating my little paper so that everybody knows all the stuff that needs to be. So I guess a word of mouth thing. If you go past a thrift store, stop in, talk to the people there. Just talk to people because everybody knows a lot of stuff if they're asked about it. Or when you see the lineup at the Olean Food Pantry on Monday and Friday, you know something's going on there. So stop in and offer your time.